Hey everybody, it's John with Seattle Coffee Gear. I'm here with a crew review of the Nuova Simonelli Mythos Clima Pro 1 grinder. The Mythos 2 came out a little while back, and our last video on the Mythos 1, which has still been pretty popular, was pretty old, so we thought it was time for an update on the Mythos 1. This is now the Clima Pro model, which means it has the temperature-controlled burr chamber. So the burr chamber is both heated and cooled. You can see with this little cable right here, that's running power. And then if I feel this burr chamber, it is actually warm to the touch. Research has found that coffee, as it's grinding, as long as the temperature stays the same throughout the grinding time, that's the best way to grind coffee. If your temperature swings from hot to cold or cold to hot, that can cause damage and inconsistency in your coffee grinds. But as long as the temperature stays consistent throughout the grinding process, that's when you get great consistency. So that's what they're trying to do with this, having a heated and cooled grind chamber to just help things be a lot more consistent. You have your adjustment knob right here for the grind setting. And if you'll notice, this is kind of angled, and that's because the motor and the burrs themselves are actually angled as well. And so the way that this is set up, the way that the burrs are designed, means that there's a very short path from the burrs to the chute, and there's a very low amount of retention inside the grinder. So that means less coffee is wasted between grind changes. And if your grinder sits for a while, there's less ground coffee stored inside the grinder that you have to clear out between settings if you don't want to serve stale coffee. The controls for this grinder are up here. You get 3 different grind setting options, and then these are your buttons to change the time. I had this set at 3.7 seconds for about a 20 gram dose, and I'm using a pretty lightly roasted coffee. So just to give you some reference there, I was getting about 60 grams out in 27 seconds, and I'll pull some espresso in a bit and taste that. But that gives you some reference there. To get into more of the programming, you can hold both of these buttons and you can see a lot of the programming here. A lot of this is stuff that you really don't use. So the delay and the pulse I don't really use, but you can go through all your counts here, see how long the grinder's been running for. This is a pretty new grinder. And then you can do quite a bit there. This is a setting that I am appreciative of, the stop and go. I think it used to be called something else when this grinder first came out, but basically what that allows you to do is to take your portafilter, and if the stop and go is on, you can lock your portafilter into place, and as soon as you remove your portafilter, it stops grinding. So it'll still go for that set amount of time, but you can remove your portafilter, redistribute, and then continue grinding and just take pauses and have that timer still running. So that's a nice feature, but if you turn it off, then as soon as you click that button, the grind time will just run for the whole time. So with it on, I have it set for 3.7 seconds. So I could click this and hold, run it for 1.5 seconds, stop, and then run it for the rest of the time until I get my full dose. With stop and go off, I would just click it once and it's gonna run for the time I have set regardless. Even if I remove the portafilter, it's just gonna keep running. So I like that feature. That's a unique feature on the Mythos. You can change your password, your language, and then you're back to that main setting there. Practicality-wise, one of the little things that's really nice about this grinder is the location of the grounds tray. That's one of my favorite things whenever I use this grinder is if you need to purge grounds, you don't have to have a portafilter here and dump stuff out. You don't need to awkwardly hold something or have a grounds tray that doesn't catch the grinds. It all just falls right into here when you activate the grinder. And so you can just purge right into the grinder drip or catch tray and then dump this out when you're done purging. And it also contains all the mess from your grinder. So it's really easy to dump this out once this gets full. Put it in my knock box there. So to show you about that stop and go setting, so I'll lock it into place and then I can remove it, redistribute a little bit, and come back and get the rest of my dose. And then distribute again. And as you can see, it is a very fluffy, not clumpy ground. Hold it back here as well. So great, easy to redistribute this just because there's no real clumps or anything in it. So that's one of the hallmarks of this grinder with that clump crusher, which over time will need to get replaced. So if you see your grind start clumping up or you're having problems, it's just probably time to do some maintenance on this grinder. Since I have seen this last, they have changed out the switch here. It used to be a different switch style that I've heard from different baristas would wear out and need to be replaced. So hopefully this switch style here, which kind of reminds me of like a pedal box for guitar effects or something like that, it seems pretty sturdy. It seems like it'll last a bit longer than that previous switch style. You can adjust the Portafilter rest here. It is a hexagonal screw, so not something you're just gonna change with the Phillips like some of the Eureka grinders, but it is adjustable up and down, and it is very solid, so you could use this to knock your Portafilter against to settle your grounds if that's how you like to distribute your espresso. Another thing I've noticed about this grinder is the adjustment knob does not seem to be as sensitive as some other grinders like a Mozart or some of the Eurekas. It seems like the adjustment control here requires more turning to get your desired effect in your brew time and your grind size. So when I came back to this grinder, it took me a little bit to kind of get used to how the grind adjustment works on this compared to some of the other grinders that I've been using recently. But after a little bit of practice, it was okay. This has a shorter hopper on it. It does have an option for a taller hopper if you need that, but as you can see, it's kind of a unique hopper shape. So the taller one would just extend up a little bit higher. So if you're a really high volume cafe and you need more storage than this, you do have that option. I personally like the smaller hopper and just would refill more often because I like the lower profile look of it. And as you saw there is a kill switch inside the grinder for that hopper. So when you remove the hopper, it does turn off the grinder. Keep that in mind. Knock that off there. And then this lid is a nice heavy duty feeling piece of metal. So this is a premium grinder. It is definitely priced in a premium way for high volume use. So little things like this metal lid are a nice touch because I can't count the number of times that I get a call from someone saying, I broke my hopper lid. Can you please send me a new hopper lid? You're not going to be breaking this because it is metal. So that is a nice touch for a grinder at this price point. It does lock into place nicely. And if I can turn this, show you the fan system on it. So we have two fans here designed to keep the motor cool and then that burr chamber cool. One thing you might want to consider if you're looking at this grinder is you need to keep space between this fan and whatever's next to it. So some people will stack two of these grinders side by side. That can cause overheating. Similarly, if it's back up against a wall and there's no space for this fan to get air and ventilation, that can cause overheating as well. So make sure you have some space between your grinders or between your wall and the grinder, something like that. I've heard about that from a few folks who have these too close together as they can overheat if you get really busy. Keep that in mind. Well, let's pivot this back around here. And like I was saying, I'm using a lighter roasted coffee. It's a single origin coffee. I think it's from South America. I threw out the bag, I can't remember, but it's from Ladro, Cafe Ladro or Ladro Roasting. So let's give that a try. Give this a quick purge. It's been sitting for a little bit. This does have the T3 technology, which regulates the temperature pretty well. So I'm not too worried about that crackling. Sometimes it just does that. There we go. Take a second and I'm going to redistribute. And let's see where we're at. 19.2. So what I like to do is have my first button set up as what I call like a bump dose. And so that's a 0.2 of a second dose. And that's usually enough to get me right to 20. So about 3.9 seconds would have given me a full 20 gram dose. The burrs on this are titanium coated, so they might just still be within that break-in period, because normally this grinder is a little bit faster, more in like the 3-second range for a double shot instead of that like 3 to 4 second range where I'm sitting at right now. But got my portafilter all loaded up here, tiny bit uneven, but we'll see what happens. Just gonna load up my scale and go directly into the cup here. And I'll brew. While that's brewing, I'm gonna grab a spoon to stir this. Alrighty, so that pulled a little bit faster than I was wanting. That was about 21 seconds for a 60 gram shot, but I got my big stir spoon here. Let's give it a rinse. And a stir. I'm guessing this is going to be too hot for me, so let's knock this first. I have the auto purge set up on this, so as soon as you remove the portafilter, it will purge for a second there. And then this is one of the nice little fellow Dimitoses here for my espresso. And that's 60 grams in there, and it's still a little bit of room for the top, so you probably could do like a 30 gram shot with some milk for like a macchiato or something like that. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of citrus notes off the nose of that. A little bit of like hazelnut and maybe some graham cracker in there. As I expected, that's really hot, but still a lot of the citrus coming through, some chocolate, and some nuttiness in the background. I'll probably go through and fine that up a little bit to lengthen my brew time, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that shot, and I've been happy with this grinder. I know a lot of cafes have been using this grinder and just love them. So if you go to a high volume specialty shop, look at what the grinders are, and there's a good chance it's one of these. And if you've been looking for a grinder for your coffee shop and you're thinking you're gonna do a lot of volume and wanna serve really high quality espresso every single time, this is a good contender for that. One thing that you do want to consider, just as we're wrapping this up, with more of the electronics and everything involved in this, you do have to be aware that you may need more maintenance as things move along. So keep that in mind. It is a more expensive grinder with more going on. And so if you're afraid of a little bit of maintenance going on down the road, you might want to look at a simpler grinder that doesn't have some of those heating and cooling and all those other features built into it. So keep that in mind. But overall, a lot of coffee shops use this grinder. It'll produce really consistent espresso back to back. I know a lot of places who just never adjust their grinder. They just leave it the same all day, a couple days in a row, and the espresso pulls the same all the time. That's the feedback I've gotten from quite a number of people. Check this out on our website. If you have any questions about the ClimaPro grinder, make sure to leave us a comment down below. I'll try to jump in the comment section when the video goes live and answer some of those questions. You can also give us a call or email us. We're happy to help out with any questions you have there. Please subscribe to our channel. It definitely helps us to know that we're doing something right if we see that number growing. So thank you for that. And just thank you again for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the day.